It can be difficult to establish when exactly the 5 Mile Road began. There have been several sources dating it back to the 19th century, but establishing exactly when proved more difficult. The name 5 Mile Road is a colloquial name for what is officially known as La Grande Route de Miel, or La Route de Miel, the link road between Latac and La Polente, but tracing its origins can begin with an examination of the Godfrey map of 1849, which shows that whilst roads existed at either end of St. Owen's Bay, there was no sign of the road linking Latac and La Polente. From this starting point, a look at the Richards map dating to 1867 shows a road now running the length of St. Owen's Bay. This provided a date span from 1849 to 1867, and research of the States of Jersey minutes and committee minutes revealed that approval for a link road along the bay was granted on the 21st of September 1855, as seen here. This followed a report and assessment by the Island's Defence Committee for a military road from Lavaur to La Polente, and the States also granted an initial sum of £300. Referring back to the 1867 map of Jersey by Staff Commander J. Richards, as seen here, confirms as mentioned before that this road approved in 1855 was now complete. Clearly, this road transformed the bay and made it far more accessible than it had been previously, when a largely rural population in the bay, especially in the more heavily farmed areas at Latac and La Polente, would have used the beach as a means of travelling from one side of the bay to the other. The building of the 5 Mile Road was an important step in the accessibility of St. Owen's Bay for a much wider local and visitor population, as well as an important military route for the defence of a key part of the island. As a major road, the responsibility for its construction, therefore, came under a specific committee, and from the minutes of the committee responsible for La Grande Route de Miel, it clearly indicates that while a road was in place by 1867, work on the road continued throughout the 1860s and into the early 1870s. This is demonstrated by the report seen here by the committee on the 14th of October 1869, which requested the States of Jersey for a grant of further sums of £300 for both 1870 and 1871 in order to complete more work on the road, including Mont de la Polente. Therefore, road work in the form of various improvements, such as widening in certain areas, were ongoing. Nevertheless, the presence of a continuous road along the bay, particularly as tourism began to boom in Jersey, saw the 5 Mile Road area with its natural beauty and large expanse of sand dunes, beach and good surf become an obvious draw for both islanders and tourists. But what about the origin of the name of the road? Well, the official name Miel has Norse origins and means sand dune. So logically, it is the road of the sand dunes. The colloquial name of the 5 Mile Road, on the other hand, which on the almanac of 2010 can now be seen as running across the large stretch of dunes from the Route de la Polente to the Route de Lavaur near to Lewis Tower, provides a curiosity in the fact that this is not actually 5 miles. According to the research of Frank Fool, the 5 mile term comes from the fact that if a person was standing at Corbière, looking towards Latac, it is around 5.5 miles. This makes sense in the fact that the road spanning the three parishes of St. Ouen, St. Peter and St. Brelade, once built, provided a link between both ends of the bay and a continuous road for the first time. In this talk, I will concentrate mainly on the buildings after the road was built, and the area from Le Lavaur, or Lewis Tower, to La Polente. However, some mention should be made of some of the buildings built prior to the road. Many of these were influenced by the potential threat of foreign invasion, and one such invasion in the area occurred during the English Civil War, when, with the defeat and execution of Charles I in 1649, the Lord Protector of the new Parliamentarian Republic, Oliver Cromwell, seen here, focused his attention on other royalist strongholds, such as Jersey. This resulted in Admiral Blake and a parliamentarian force arriving on the 20th of October 1651. Initially, bad weather delayed a landing. However, 2 days later, under the command of Colonel James Hearn, a parliamentarian force were able to land on St. Owen's beach, by which time many of the militia had returned home. In the subsequent skirmish, often called the Battle of the Dunes, Royalist governor George de Carteret was forced to retreat to Elizabeth Castle, where following a siege, he surrendered and the island came under Cromwell's rule for the next 9 years. In the 18th century, the area was again the focus of invasion, this time a failed attempt by a French force under Prince Nassau on the 1st of May 1779, which convinced the island of the need to strengthen this area with a number of defensive fortifications. This included La Tour Carrée, a fortified guardhouse built circa 1778 on the coastal side of St. Owen's Pond, and the round tower La Tour de Sud, or the South Tower, near Le Bray, which collapsed into the sea in the 1850s following sea incursion. Other 18th century fortifications, such as gun batteries, redoubts and entrenchments, can be seen on the William Faden map of 1781. Many of these fortifications consisted of earth embankments and timber decks, which haven't survived the stone-built ones such as the New North Battery, seen here in front of Kemp Tower, which remains, and from a report on the 28th of August 1797, was noted as having 3 24-pounder guns. Military construction along the 5 Mile Road continued into the 19th century, with Larocco Tower, which was built between 1796 and 1801, and the cost £13,662. Other fortified towers within the bay and along the area of the 5 Mile Road include Kemp Tower and Lewes Tower. Kemp Tower in St Wand was built in 1834 near to the remains of a Neolithic forest, which with the peat beds are sealed beneath intertidal sands and can be found in the bay adjacent to the tower. Kemp Tower was built as a result of a report commissioned by Lieutenant Colonel Lewis, the commanding engineer for Jersey, following an inquiry by King William IV in 1831 regarding the island's coastal defence. It is the largest example of a Martello tower in Jersey, being designed to house 1 24-pounder gun and 2 24-pounder short guns, and the tower's name derives from Sir James Kemp, the Master of the Ordnance at the time. In more recent times, it became an interpretation centre for the natural environment around St Wand's Bay from 1985 to 2010. Another tower triggered by the report was Lewes Tower, and contractor Jean Grouchy laid the foundations in May 1835. However, it was not without some complications, which came about when the seigneur of the fief de Morville, Philip de Home, raised a clameur de Harrow in June 1835. It resulted in the local workmen refusing to work, and Colonel Lewis was forced to send the Royal Engineers back to barracks to await a court's decision. The reason for the clameur de Harrow centred on part of the site being common land, and was settled after the bailiff held a meeting in which it was decided to compensate the seigneur with 600 francs, as well as compensation for local farmers who had rights to this land. With the problems resolved, the tower, seen here, was finished in July 1835 for £798. Initially named the One-Gun Tower, it was subsequently called Lewes Tower after the Lieutenant Governor Lewis. A report by the Royal Engineers dated 15th of February 1848 records Lewes Tower as having 1 32-pounder. During the occupation, the German forces added concrete searchlight housing to the base and a new entrance at ground level. In more recent times, the Jersey Scout Association used the tower. The collections reveal a lease agreement dated the 1st of August 1974 for 5 years in the sum of 25 pence. Both Kemp and Lewes Towers were transferred from the Defence Committee into Public Works in 1964 as per the plan seen here. Besides a series of towers built along the bay and the 5 Mile Road, there was also a guardhouse known as Le Don Hilton or Le Commun Amory Best, and more commonly referred to as the White House in St Peter. The colloquial name of the White House seen here derives from the fact that sailors used it as a landmark. The original guardhouse first appears in the records of 1665 as St Peter's Guardhouse and Magazine when the defence of the bay was a shared responsibility with St Wand. However, it was rebuilt in 1765 with a vaulted stone roof after the original one was blown up. The name of Mary Best originates from when she used the property with her children after 1815. After she died in 1832, the house went into a state of disrepair, although by the time of the purchase of land at the southern end of the site, on the 12th of February 1866, it is noted that John Beshley lived there, whilst employed to gather and farm vrake from the inlets and bays close by. On the 21st of November 1925, following purchase by William Gregory, controversy occurred as to whether the Crown had the right to sell it or whether the States of Jersey owned it. A letter from the Attorney General refers to the matter in some detail and a breakdown of the purchase at the northern end of the site on the 24th of October 1795. The central portion on the same date from Jean Dumaresque, and the southern portion of the site, as mentioned previously, was bought from Philip Lefevre in a land exchange. Ultimately, the guardhouse was acquired by Captain John Aston Hilton as part of the purchase of the northern part of the site and donated by the National Trust for Jersey by his widow, Marie Genevieve Hilton, née Hind, in 1975. Following construction of the 5 Mile Road, military influence in the surrounding area continued with events such as the First World War. The need for a prisoner of war camps resulted in the building of the Timber Town camp at Blanchard's Bank, seen on this postcard. A letter and confidential timetable, dated the 18th of March 1915, advises of the arrival of the first German prisoners of war for internship on the morning of the 20th of March 1915. His Excellency expresses the wish for there to be no photographers and cinematographers allowed at Albert Pier for the arrival. Lieutenant Colonel G. Haynes is recorded as commandant of the camp, and a number of interesting documents exist about it. For example, a letter dated the 17th of May 1915 from the Constable of St Brelard to the Attorney General refers to the fact that the honorary police of the parish assisted the military guard at the camp with patrolling the road outside. Other documents include a letter from Edward Lander manufacturers of 3 Brook Streets at Helier, who were acting as the army contractor for the camp. A letter dated the 29th of March 1916 requests help from the Attorney General with regard to a license for cigars from Holland. By 1917, the camp held over 1,500 prisoners and 150 guards, as well as 20 to 30 officers. The camp finally closed in October 1919. Whilst there has already been considerable coverage of the occupation in relation to St. Owen's Bay, some brief mention should be made to the impact on the 5 Mile Road area. One of the most significant was the destruction of numerous buildings to make way for the large-scale fortifications. This is clearly highlighted in a letter from State's Department of Labour dated the 22nd of July 1941 to the bailiff Alexander Coutanche, in which it refers to the wanton destruction going on at the 5 Mile Road, St. Ouen and St. Peter, where bungalows and counterbank walls were being destroyed. This included destruction of some of the 18th century fortifications, such as the High Tower to make way for Resistance Nest, although the house on the site, also referred to as High Tower, was kept and is now the Discovery Bay Apartments with Big Van's Cafe at the side. The tower was demolished into sections by using explosives. Part of this fortification programme involved large-scale requisition by the Germans, such as the land requisition around Lewis Tower and Le Bray. With the destruction of existing properties and land requisition in St. Owen's Bay and along the 5 Mile Road, the map by Howard Buckland Baker of Jersey, compiled for the Channel Islands Occupation Society, illustrates what fortifications were put in their place, with the section of the 5 Mile Road highlighted. Beside the land requisition, numerous buildings were adapted and altered, such as Lewis Tower, which was converted into a resistance nest with several gun casemates, one of which was demolished in 1948 to allow Leveur Slipway to be reopened. There was also a resistance nest at Camp Tower, which included a 60cm mounted searchlight on the tower, which ran up a ramp to the operating platform. The tower seen here, one of the fortifications situated in front of it, was also adapted to include armoured doors, concrete ceilings in place of the wooden ones, and steel machine gun loopholes. Moving away now from the military story of the 5 Mile Road, another major impact on the road was surfing, and the area's attraction to both local and international surfers. The early beginnings of surfing both in Jersey and St. Owen's Bay came about through the efforts of Nigel Oxenden, who formed the Island Surf School of Jersey in 1923. Although it no longer exists, the school is generally acknowledged as the oldest surf club in Europe, and began the strong connection between surfing, the 5 Mile Road, and many iconic buildings along it. Interestingly, although the occupation led to many fortifications, minefields and no-go zones in the area for the general public, and thereby prevented local continuance of the sport during the period, nevertheless, the following picture does demonstrate that even the occupying forces appreciate the excellent surf, as can be seen in the slide of Baron von Aufsus, the head of civil affairs for the Channel Islands from 1944 until the end of the occupation. The revival of the sport and another major development for local surfing came in the 1950s with the arrival of the South African lifeguards at St. Ouen and the Water Splash, who introduced the locals to stand-up surfing. Buildings such as the Water Splash, therefore, became key focal points for these developments and became synonymous with the sport. Arthur Parker built the original property after he purchased the land from William Gregory in 1927 and called it Idaho. During World War II, the German army requisitioned the property, and the current name of the Water Splash didn't occur till after the war, with its transformation from a residential home arriving with the purchase of the property by Harry Swanson on the 24th of January 1948. Extracts of a petition from Harry Swanson to the States of Jersey on the 13th of March 1962 can be seen here, relating to further development of the site. The document clearly reveals that by this stage a theatre restaurant existed, and Harry Swanson had also employed the South African lifeguards on the beach in front of the Water Splash, a decision which, as mentioned previously, was key to the development of island surfing. Harry Swanson's support through the Water Splash also extended to allowing the Jersey Surfboard Club to use the venue for fundraising and competitions. The club had been inaugurated in August 1959 with Dr. Peter Lee as president, and rapidly became Europe's surf capital. This led to Jersey, St. Owen's Bay and the Water Splash becoming a focal point for both national and international competitions organised by the club. The first UK regional contest was held here in 1963, and the first British Championship in 1964, rapidly followed by numerous other competitions including the European Championships, won by local surfer Gordon Burgess in 1969. Another 5 Mile Road building with strong connections to surfing and the social history of the area is Altico. This provided a base for the Jersey Lifeguard Club, which began in 1953 and whose request for a lifeguard station and centre was first approved by the States in 1965. The cafe itself was initially built after the land was purchased by Maurice Herbert King from Walter Simon on the 27th of July 1946. Mr. King did run short of funds here while building the property, and in 1947 sold half a share to James Holloway and his wife, who thereby became partners in the cafe, which opened in 1948. The property, now owned by the Lafond family and recently redeveloped into the current cafe, came into the family's ownership on the 19th of May 1956, when John Theophilus Lafond and his wife Emma Nicole bought it. A number of key surfing points, or breaks, can also be found along the 5 Mile Road, including La Brea, La Porte and Secrets. Secrets, seen here, according to Steve Harwood, who is known for Freedom Surfboards, said the name originated from the fact that several of them discovered the break, and because it was so good, it was initially surfed in secret. As just mentioned, the Freedom business itself, which Steve Harwood founded in 1969, taking on friend Barry Jenkins as a business partner, initially had its first factory behind his dad's house opposite Barge Ground on the 5 Mile Road. International success was epitomised by endorsement of a range of boards in 1981 by the then world champion Shaun Tomson. This included a deal to sell Thompson's clothing brand, an area the retail business had branched into. Subsequently, Harwood sold the Freedom name to Mike Wilkinson. Besides military and surfing, tourism also plays its part in the story of the 5 Mile Road, and a good example of which is Chateau Plaisir. Sadly, only the bar and military museum are still open to the public, with the rest of the property now rental lets, but still a good example of a key tourist spot across the years. It began life when Arthur William Lefevre acquired the land on the 6th of April 1929, before selling it in 1932 with a building called Chateau Plaisir to Alala Malvina Forster, née Chambers. On the 17th of July 1933, Forster sold the property to a Victor Halen, before being sold by him on the 19th of May 1934 to Chateau Plaisir Limited, who were registered as a company in the Royal Court on the 5th of May 1934. A page of the Memorandum of Association for the company can be seen here, which details the purchase from Victor Halen. Records indicate that up to 1940, the property was being run as a holiday camp, which included 80 holiday chalets, and the foundations of part of the camp can be seen here in front of the current military museum. However, at this point it was requisitioned by the States of Jersey for use as an Army Boys Technical School on the 15th of June 1940, and by the onset of the German occupation, the German Army requisitioned the land and buildings on the 20th of March 1942, which were demolished and the camp replaced by a Type 646 water pumping bunker in 1943. After the war, records reveal that R.R. Kane of 14 The Terrace, Grosvenor Street, St Helier, wrote on behalf of the company several letters, including one to the Secretary of State of Home Affairs on the 16th of October 1946. In the letter, he complains about a lack of permission to reinstate the holiday camp, as well as compensation for the loss of property. Here we can see 2 pages from the inventory, taken when it was first requisitioned in 1940. Records show that the President of the Rehabilitation Committee confirmed refusal on the basis that a ban on holiday camps had been imposed on the 26th of April 1946, prior to Captain Kane's request, and only 2 camps still in existence were allowed to remain. By March 1947, the Comité de Buttes Naturelles and the Bailiff's Chambers agreed to a hotel of appropriate design. The subsequent hotel appears in the Almanac of 1953 as Hotel Chateau Plaisir, with the name T.B. Spencer registered as the owner. The next part of the story begins on 31st of October 1962, when the company had been declared en disastre and was facing court proceedings, which at this point had been halted due to alleged false valuation of the hotel contents at £12,000, when auditors only valued it at £2,000. The property was then sold to St One's Hotels on the 23rd of March 1963, who continued running the property until its sale to Ann Street Brewery on the 5th of June 1987, with its name changing from Chateau Plaisir during the late 1980s to Chateau Shopping. Numerous other properties along the 5 Mile Road have also been influenced by tourism and entertainment ventures, such as the Tropicana, seen here, which later became Sands nightclub and is now Big Vern's and holiday apartments. Another example is La Brea Cafe, which was built in June 1964. A property which has been both tourist accommodation and a residential one is the Cutty Sark. On the 8th of October 1932, Kenneth Britton bought an area of sand dune and subsequently built a property known as Pro Temon. This was run as a guest house for a number of years under this name, and appears in various tourism brochures. The property was then sold to Alfred Samuel John de Gruchy on the 15th of November 1947, who then sold it shortly afterwards to Leonard Stanley Greville on the 15th of May 1948. Leonard Greville retained the property until the 23rd of December 1961, when he sold it to Stanton Limited, and it's sometime after the mid-1960s that it became known as the Cutty Sark. In the Tourism Invitation to Jersey brochures of 1966 and 1981, it can be seen under both names being run as a guest house. The 1981 advert promotes bed and breakfast and evening dinner for £11.50 with the slogan of Jersey on the seafront. Stanton Limited subsequently was declared bankrupt on the 25th of May 1990, at which point the property was taken over by Randalls Vautier Limited. In recent times, the natural landscape around the 5 Mile Road in St One's Bay has been protected from widespread residential development. Prior to the road, the general inaccessibility and widespread sand dunes ensured minimal development, even agriculturally, as can be seen here in Hughes Godfrey map of 1849, showing only the J. Carroll property in the near vicinity. Nevertheless, some residential building has occurred though. As mentioned, a number were destroyed during the occupation. In this talk, I will focus on Barge Ground, seen here, and Atlantique Cottage. George Lionel Cox purchased the site of Barge Ground in 3 separate transactions. 11th of December 1926, 16th of June 1934, and 22nd of September 1934, with the property also called Seagull being built circa 1935 by Mark Amy Limited. At the time, the 5 Mile Road was dotted with beach chalets, many of which were destroyed in the occupation. Barge Ground was requisitioned by the German forces in 1941 and used as a canteen during the occupation. However, after the war, Lionel Cox returned and restored it to a beach chalet before leaving it to the Scout Association, with it now run as a holiday let operated by Jersey Heritage. The second property, Atlantique Cottage, seen here, has a strong surfing connection and a famous name associated with it. John Francis LeCornu bought the land on which the house was built on the 19th of November 1904 from John Edward Hookard and called it 5 Mile Cottage. Interestingly, Jesse Boot then bought it on the 9th of April 1923, who is known for turning his father's boots company into the national one we know today, which was often branded Chemists to the Nation. He sold the property on the 30th of June 1933 to William Charles Gresley Simpson, and following further sales, it was ultimately bought by Charles Harwood on the 20th of November 1963 from R.F. Wills Limited. By this time, the house name had changed, becoming first Atlantic View and then Atlantique. Charles Harwood was known for his creation, the Surf Ski Sun Lotion seen here, which became very popular and was sold island-wide during the 1960s and 1970s. Initially produced at the hospital pharmacy, as its commercial success grew, he produced the products at his home on the 5 Mile Road. The range included after-sun, tar remover, and a sun lotion in different factors. Finally, the property went to Steve Harwood, who, as mentioned previously, was known for Freedom surfboards and a successful surfer, had his ideal house only a short distance from the water splash and secrets. One of the most picturesque parts of the 5 Mile Road and its surrounding area is the natural beauty of places such as Lamaro Seigneur, or St One's Pond as it is known colloquially, seen in this map from 1958. The pond was first recorded as early as 1309, when it was an extra source of fish for the Seigneur of St One. The reeds were often a sort of thatching, and during the occupation, anti-tank ditches were built to the north and south. In 1972, the National Trust for Jersey purchased the pond and much of its surrounding land, since when it has been an important nature reserve. This is, however, just one element of natural landscape in the area, which includes Le Miel de Morville, as well as the use of natural products within the environment, such as rake and farming, and sand through quarrying, like the Simon Sand Gravel Company seen here, opposite Le Bray and run by the Simon family since 1909, and now the only local supplier of sand in Jersey.